Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My special guest is Camilla Rossi Chauvenet from the estate Massimago in the Valpolicella area.
Hi,
Ciao, Camilla. How
hi,
are you?
hello, hi, everybody.
Camilla, we met, I think, was it about 12 or 13 or 14 years ago? I'm trying to remember. And
Yes, when I started, when
right,
I was beginning this work,
I think you were, what, 15 years old back then or something?
more
Something
or
like
less.
that. Okay. Well, my first question before we talk about the estate and your history and everything else is I've been doing these webinars for a couple of years now, and I did several with some producers from Piemonte earlier this year, and they had some very strange weather. They had no snow, they had almost no rain. I've read recently that in certain parts of Europe it's been extremely warm. So, what's the weather been like this year in winter and spring so far in Valpolicella?
But yes, we also had some strange episodes because we even in these days we are having not in Valpolicella but in Veneto region we are having some hailstorms
Oh, oh, oh.
quite unusual because we have like 20 centimeters of hail just in few hours.
Was that
Um,
earlier this week or?
yeah, yeah, in Asolo, so near in Veneto,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, but and also in but I heard also about Puglia. They also had a uh, really strange um, hailstorm. So I really cross fingers because usually in Valpolicella, especially in the last few years, we have frequent hailstorms that destroyed part of the production. So we are really worried about it, especially because when it's too hot, as in these days, uh, especially because it's May, it's not already summer.
Right.
So we do not expect to have this temperature. We reached to 35, 38 degrees.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So it's quite unusual. And after a bit, I mean, a high heat of hot temperature, usually you could also have hail. So we are crossing fingers and trying to discover how to manage this stuff because especially because of the water, there is no much water in the rivers and even
Okay.
in the springs, and especially in the hills, it's really difficult to reach water. I mean, because in the flat area is probably most is really easier probably, but in the hills, so you have these springs. We have a spring. We have also um, water from the Lowry. I mean, from the Mary, but yeah, it's quite difficult to manage this period. Uh, about I mean, in wintertime we didn't have, especially in the last in January, February, we didn't have rain. Also, this is
Okay.
it's something that is could be a problem because we didn't have enough water to manage then this summer. So the soils didn't reach enough water to be able to survive in the next months. So uh, yeah, it's
Was
quite difficult.
I know that certain years before when there's a drought, it carries over. You don't have the water reserve. So was 21 to last year 2021? Did you have sufficient rain?
No, but the 2020 we had some humidity and rain, but in 2021 now has been quite dry, so we didn't have too much water. And but I remember the 2021 as a really good year, good vintage, because even if we have less water, we manage it anyway in a good way, and even the grapes didn't had so much problems because of the water. So yeah. So the last few years, I remember the 2019 as one of the coldest springtime in the last 30 years. So I remember a really hot summer, but during the rest of the year we had quite a lot. I mean, we had sorry, but my English in the
No, no, it's
voice
fine.
is
English is
really
fine.
bad.
No,
So I had to invent some words. No, but so yeah, I remember 2019 as a pretty fine vintage, and 2020 as well as a really humid springtime and summer. But the 2021 has been quite hot and dry. So more or less in the last few years, yes, we had this specific. Then we saw also a really big problem, but not talking about temperature and forecast, but about uh, the illness of the vines. We had sort of bait. I don't know if I pronunciate in a correct way, but we have a percentage of sorrel bait that raise up incredibly. So some problems as oidium, peronospora
okay.
came out much more frequently compared to the past. So that's why, for example, in Massimago, as we are organic, we saw compared to the other companies that are cultivating in a normal, in a conventional way, that if you are organic, probably you are giving, you are raising the immune system of your plants. So the roots are much more, are stronger,
Right.
and they probably they get the water and the oxygen easier than the other plants that probably are organized in a different way. So we saw that if you get stronger the immune system of your plants, then they're gonna probably be much stronger and resilient to this disease and to these problems.
Okay.
You can see it's a farm is without a roof, without walls.
Of course.
So
Yeah. You're working under the sun, right?
yeah, so you could do nothing about that.
And your farming is all organic, correct?
Yeah, no, we organic since the beginning, since in 2008 we started transform our conventional way to cultivate, into organic, and in 2014 we also had received the certification.
Okay.
And since that, with all the property, because the property is one block of 30 hectares, so 12 of vineyards, but goes from 80 to 300 or 400 meters of altitude. That's why it is one block, it's one crew, so it's divided from our neighborhoods, and they are really far away because we are in a kind of a paradise. And that's why we also decided to be organic, because we were really far away from our.
Yeah. Right. Your neighbors are not coming next door and spraying and on your plants or anything like that. Exactly. So let me
Correct.
put up a map real quick, just a generic map of the Valpolicella area, and so people know exactly where you're at, because a lot of people, you should be able to see it now.
Yes.
They think of Valpolicella Classic, where many famous wineries are, but as we talked about the last time we visited, it's like there's so many wonderful examples of Valpolicella and Amarone that are not from the Classica district. So you are all the way over here in Mezzane, see?
Yes, we are in Mezzane, in a really wild area. We are more or less 16 producers, small and tiny producers in the same valley. We are trying to also be found an organization, like a group of producers.
Okay.
It's really recent, this group, so we're gonna try to valorize our markers, our characteristics, and we are trying to also talk about Mezzane as an identity, no, a different valley from, because you always talk about the classic area, the Mezzane area, Valpantena, but when you are talking about the eastern part of Valpolicella, it's really difficult to find an identity, and to also explain to our wine lovers where we are, and that's why, as we are really wild. I say wild because in the other valleys there are many fabrics, houses. It's really there's a lot of traffic and
Yes, there is. Yeah.
yeah. And Mezzane is the opposite, so you can find only bush and little forests.
Forest. Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
You see, and that's why we decided to create this group and try to fight for our now to talk about our
But
valley.
I'm glad to hear that, because it's just it's you're correct. There's so much emphasis on Valpolicella Classica or Amarone della Valpolicella Classico, and there's so many other wonderful wineries. So you mentioned your group that you're trying to get together is not to promote anybody else, but just a famous name. But Romano del Forno, are they part of your group, or?
No, because Del Forno is in Illasi, Tregnago,
Okay.
the other valley, but it's not a matter of trying to compete.
Right.
It's trying to give an example and also explain that Valpolicella could be as a Burgundy, right? So where every single valley could express its own characteristics. So could be also fun if in the future other valleys could follow our example and try to valorize their characteristics too. So it's also a matter of trying to match with these other producers and talk about our needs and talk about the valley, and so it's really interesting.
And what's the elevation of the vineyards here in Mezzane, where you're at?
Goes because our the forest, I mean, vine that we have is just on the limit of the Valpolicella, because afterwards you decline the valley, and then you go to Dal Forno, for example. Dal Forno is my neighborhood, but in the other valley.
Okay.
So Massimago, it's the face of a hill and goes from 80 to 400 meters. So. Okay. This is more or less the altitude of the right side of the valley Mezzane.
Okay. Well, the reason I did mention Del Forno, and I know they're in Illasi, was just, again, this belief, and I even had one famous producer, who I will not mention his name, who said, well, the only great Amarones or things are from the Classica area. And it's like, obviously that's not true. If Del Forno, who is as famous as anyone in Valpolicella and Amarone, is not in the Classico, that just shows you that there's great wines made in the entire zone. So, and let me put up a little map of that your assistant sent me of just where you're at compared to Verona and all the other features you have.
Yeah, you see, we mentioned even the Garda Lake, because Venice and Garda Lake are really well known. We invest a lot of energy in hospitality too, and we are probably the first seller, the first winery in Italy that gave the name of the brand also to some others aspects in terms of hospitality. So we decided to give the name of other structure too. So We also have a boutique hotel in Verona, a boutique hotel in Padova, but and the relay at the winery, no.
Okay.
So and that's why, because we want to give the possibility, the opportunity to live a wine experience in all our places, but they are really different places. So Verona, we are really close to the arena, but you could have a wine tasting over there in the old cellar. In
Okay.
Padova as well, we are really close to Venice, and see. So our aim is to really create a link, an intimate link between us and our customers, and our final customers too, because the ones that are coming in these structures are really curious. They are really sharing the same needs and the same philosophy of life. So they meet each other and they know our efforts doing wine. So they are participating to all our works. I mean, in the vines, they could also participate in the vinification. So Massimago is not just a winery, but is a hub, like a platform where we host people to understand, to be educated in the wine world, but even especially for sure educated in Valpolicella wines, and also educated in sustainability, because we are all talking about sustainability, organic farming, and so on. But when you only hear about it and you don't experience it and talk with the farmer who is doing really many efforts to do that, and to believe in these choices, is really difficult to understand it, and to really to have a conscious, to be conscious about it. That's why for us hospitality is not just it's not business. It's a way to educate people and to be closer to them.
Well, I know that I agree totally, and I know that obviously with all the money in Tuscany, there's a lot of hospitality, a lot of very well-financed estates down in Tuscany that have their own hotels and relay and things like that. But I would imagine this is not that common in Valpolicella. Am I correct?
No, but I mean, there are so many producers that are trying to be organized, because it's a matter of organization, and to be open during the weekends, having always somebody who is talking could talk in English, who could present and sell the products. I mean, the customers now are really the needs, the expectations in a winery are getting really higher. So if in the past they were just asking a glass of wine, nowadays they're asking for a restaurant, they're asking for uh, pairing with food, they're asking for wine tasting in a cellar, or a wine tour in the vineyards. So you see, nowadays, especially Z generation, so the young people are really educated in the wine world. So they are asking you mm, many different things. So it's, for us, it's really interesting, because you could receive immediately feedbacks on your wines, and you could know people that could give you some stimulus, some ideas, people that are working in other countries, in other areas, in other subjects, and they are all really engaged in this. They are really curious people, so they become your ambassadors, and it's extremely interesting how, though even in the next years, they are coming back. They are trying
Right.
to talk about your project, and you see. So I'm really happy to have the to mm, that we decided to invest in this channel. I mean, in the hospitality, because we are being probably the first ones doing this 10 years ago.
Okay.
Because I was alone and I wanted to share my project with other people, and I'm really happy that I'm still doing this, and people really appreciate our efforts. Actually, we also won some awards as the best wine tourism awards and the wine capital. It was like a competition that every year is organized, but in Verona, and I think in the future it's gonna be even further. I mean, it's gonna grow as in Piedmont. For example, in Piedmont, a wine tasting could cost I mean 120 euros
Right.
for a wine tasting. So it's pretty much.
Yeah. Well, it's good and bad. They certainly in Monte. I'm not going to go on about this too much, but they've got all that publicity about 8 or 10 years ago with the UNESCO, certification. And I have some friends that lead tours there, and they're like, they don't recognize Piemonte today, especially the town of Barolo, compared to even like 6 or 8 years ago. It's just become overrun with tourists, and it's like, you want tourists, and then it's like you can't win. It's like, and then all of a sudden there's too many tourists. So that's a whole separate story. But I think I've got the picture up here of the dinner in the cellar. So there's
this is in a wine tasting that we frequently do every day, 3 times per day. So we host people in the old cellar, and we let them taste every single wine we produce. And we also pair it with some cheeses and charcuteries. So it's a matter to it's really the best way to engage them and to let them learn about Valpolicella area. And so I think that if you have a educated customer, then he's gonna talk about you, and also is gonna learn and come back much more frequent than somebody that is just passing by.
right. Well, on that, I mean, I like what you said here, and it's a few minutes ago, and obviously it's not just, okay, let's stop here and taste a few wines and leave. I mean, there's a lot more to do. And as you said, when you're tasting the wine with food, it brings out a whole new understanding of what wine is all about, as well as wine and food. But I liked your point too about, you said how these people will now be your ambassadors, and I don't think many people think about it that way. They just think, well, hey, this particular Massimago has the restaurant, and they have a wine relay, and they'll keep that name in mind. But now they take that with them when they go home, and it's not just, okay, we had a great time there. Now it's, like as you said, they're brand ambassadors. They can really help spread the name.
I'm talking not just about the final customers, but also about the importers and restaurants, because
True.
You probably know that there are many producers that are coming to New York with their luggages and their own bottles, trying to talk with the restaurant manager and porter, and but that is completely different, because when you are coming up to you, that you are in a daily life, thinking you're stressed, you are full of appointments, meeting, and you are not focused on the wine. So you are tasting the wine, but it's not the same experience to be in holiday in Valpolicella, in the middle of the vineyards, you see, and you're gonna remember the wine in a completely different way. So you're gonna appreciate the experience to the wine.
Yeah, you're on holidays, and you hopefully everything's going well, and you're in a good mood. So it makes the experience that much better. So one last thing before we start to talk about the winery itself, but I'll put up that little map from before, but just in case people are heading there, and I hope they will, you saw on the original map from Valpolicella, Mezzane, you are in the town of Mezzane di Sotto, which if my Italian is correct, means you're underneath Mezzane. And there's another little town called Mezzane di Sopra, which is above Mezzane, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about first of all, the name Massimago. What does that mean?
Massimago comes from maximum agum, so the maximum wellness. So it's a Latin name that belongs to the property, and the property has been always one block. So since always, and it's really interesting how even the property goes from 80 to 400 meters. So you could have a completely different approach, different soils, different exposition, different altitude. So we decided to divide our plots in 14 plots, different plots. And since the beginning, we decided to micro-vinify every single vineyard. And this year, we decided to also present a special project that they had that was my dream since I started. So we decided to create 3 different Amarone from every single parcel. So to do a micro vinification for every single for 3 parcels, and to define a completely different wine. So not a blend, but just a single vineyard. That for us it's really complicated because every single plot is not so huge. So more or less we presented. I mean, we are able to produce 1,200 bottles. So
okay. Well, let's talk about that in a few minutes. I just want to go back to your origins. This is the picture of the estate, which is basically a country house. This goes back to what, the 1880s?
Yeah. My family, my mother family owned this place since 1883.
Okay.
So it's a really country house. So it's nothing special. So it's not a villa. It's not, but
Well, it's nothing special for your area, but people traveling from the United States would look at this and say, "What a beautiful house!" But
yeah, it's a colonic house, especially in that period, 1600, 1700. The typical houses from that age, it's like this. So usually Venetian people had for the summertime always a country house like that where they had all the fields around. So especially the owners of these lands usually have a house where they were passing their summertime, or where the farmers were living too. So there was usually these houses, and then just beside a place where the farmers were living.
was this like the system? I can't remember the name now. The one in Tuscany where the people lived on the farm and they were paid.
Mezzadria.
That's right. I'm sorry. Was this like that, or was it not? Or was it something different?
No, was like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, Italy, we had this kind of gentleman agreement
Okay.
where these people were cultivating the fields, and they were earning the half of the production. So half the production was for the owner, and the half was for them.
And it includes oil as well as wine, correct?
Yeah. They then every single family could arrange a different deal with the owner.
Okay.
So in percentage, or because of the houses where they were living, or you see different accords.
Okay, I'll put up a picture of one of the vineyards here, and then let's talk about the origins of the winery. When did you start, replanting and or recycling the vineyards, and then your first year of production? And
Yeah, when I started, I was really, really young, because my mother family owned this place since 1883, but I started producing wine in 2003, because before we were selling the grapes to the social cooperative. So at that time, we only had 6 hectares, and my my dream wasn't to be an entrepreneur, but was to be an artisan, so a
okay,
vigneron. As you might know, in France, France is the only country where you distinguish a vigneron from a négociant. So a vigneron, so the master, the viticulture, from the salesman, the négociant.
right.
And at that time, my dream was to be a vigneron, but my family wasn't in the business. So when nobody stopped me from my choice, but you probably imagine they considered my choice as a youth choice, like a whim of a dreamer. But afterwards, when they saw that I was really passionate, and they saw my belief, they understood that the wine board was a really great opportunity for me and for Massimago, and they helped me with energy and enthusiasm. So the first years have been really tough, because as I was much more like an artisan than a salesman.
Okay,
It has been quite difficult. And then, even because my company wasn't like the others, because you probably know that in the other companies, you always have a father who is driving the tractor, a mother who is doing administration,
right,
uh, a brother who is a cellar master,
right,
and
right, right, right.
really the daughters are marketing, experts, because it's not so much important. So you see, as I couldn't have a family like this, I had to change hat frequently, and
You wear a lot of different hats, right? Right. Right.
then I did so much vinegar, I can say, in the first
Bravo,
years.
bravo. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been really tough. But since the beginning, so in 2003, we were producing just 1,000 bottles. Nowadays, we are producing 100,000
Oh,
bottles.
wow. Great.
So
And how
we
many hectares of vineyards do you have now?
12.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Our market is around 60% abroad, and 40% in the Italian market. And
is that typical for the area? I find that the percentages are very different. Like if it's like Brunello, of course, which is world famous, most of it is abroad, like 80%, I've heard, and same with Barolo. So
yeah.
is it typical for Valpolicella, Amarone?
It's really typical, because Amarone and Valpolicella are really well known abroad. So especially US, Canada, north part of Europe. So the demand, um, the offer is not so big. So there are only few producers, and so the wines are really well known, and it's really easier for us to sell abroad instead of in Italy, where the competition is higher.
Sure.
Then our target is from 20 to 60 years old. So the wine lovers who is following us are really much, they appreciate really artisanal product, where we have excellence, but also, a sustainable way cultivate and to approach to the product. And that's why most of our clients are female as well, because they really engaged in our brand, in our project. That's why my aim is to transform Massimago in a love mark
Okay.
some way,
All right.
probably in the future. And so yes, this is our approach. So to talk about tradition, but in a fresh and contemporary way. So Massimago probably is reflecting these characteristics and this philosophy. So yeah, I'm
I,
really happy.
when, I would agree. When I wrote my article a few months ago about the best producers of Amarone, I mentioned you and I said that you had a lot of fun along the way. And I think that's an important point about, as you mentioned, with, with all of the different projects you got going on. So it's not just, Massimago is not just about, statistics and here's our Amarone, here's a Valpolicella, but you've marketed your wines in a much more engaging fashion than many other producers. So I think
Yes,
that's a good thing.
yeah, probably because we interpretate different needs. I mean, Amarone has been always a wine to collect. For us, Amarone is probably also could also be a wine that you enjoy, and then you open bottles, especially for young people that wants to approach to Amarone. They don't be they don't feel guilty when they open a bottle of it, So this is the idea, so to be closer to our customers.
Yeah. Before we talk about the wines, one last question. We talk about export. What are the biggest markets for you export?
But for us, it's US and Canada. And then, as I mentioned you before, Norway, Denmark, Netherlands. We also sell in France and Spain. Then we started a few years ago to export in Asia. We were looking for a Chinese importer since the last 10 years, but we never find one. And in the last 2 years, we found three.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. Okay.
so it's also, I was trying to figure out why we reached the Asian market, and we reached probably because the Chinese people are much closer and they want to learn more about the Italian wines. But I got really surprised.
And do you do much in Japan?
No, in Japan yes, only few bottles, but it's not a massive market.
Yeah, I would think that their food is not really. I read so many statistics about so many whites from Italy being very strong in Japan, but not so much the reds, unless we're talking about Barolo or Brunello. But
I don't know. Probably no. In Japan, they are really collectors of
okay,
wine. So they are collecting really important bottles. So instead of drinking it, probably they love to collect them.
okay.
So they are really great collectors. Um, yeah, and probably they are looking for really
So yeah,
fun.
they're not consuming as much, so they're not going to sell as much wine. Okay. Well, I mentioned just export real quick because it's your friend Katja Matthews from Artisanal in Vermont is on live today with us. So I deal with them all the time. They've been very, very helpful.
Yeah.
As far as my taste of your wines and things. So
it's a really good partner of us. They're really friend and partners as well.
Yeah, so. Katja and Jacopo. So let's talk about your wines. And before we talk about Amarone, your most famous project, you've got some other things. Not all of them are there, but you have a beautiful sparkling wine, which you have right next to you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is Mago. So it's our sparkling wine made with Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella. We started doing it in 2012. So we probably are the first ones that started to produce sparkling wine with our autochthon varieties. And I remember 2012, everybody was telling me, no, you are wasting the Amarone grapes to do a sparkling wine. You are furious, you're crazy. He could not do that. And so they started calling me witch. So that's why when I was
That's not very kind. That's not very.
so when I decided to give a name to this wine, I decided to give her the name of a witch as well. So Mago is the name of the wine, is also the name of a witch.
Oh,
And
it's like a local tradition, local story or something.
yeah, yeah,
I didn't know
absolutely.
that. Yeah,
And
go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and I started with 2,000 bottles, so really few bottles, and because it was like a test, like an experiment. And since 2012, nowadays we are producing 15,000 bottles of
Wow.
it. So people really appreciate it. They started to understand the identity of this wine, and they are asking asking for it as a really special product, because you cannot order it in restaurants. It's just a wine that you see we are selling directly to the customers.
Okay.
And we were really surprised, because for us it was kind of a challenge uh, in the first years, because I was thinking that Corvina could be really close to Pinot Noir as a color,
Right.
as acidity, freshness. That's why I decided to produce it. And after all, I really discovered that there are some similitudes, and Corvina as well could express itself in a really different way. For me, it was also an opportunity, especially during the summer at 40 degrees by the pool,
Right.
to
Right.
offer something different to our customers instead of a bottle of Amarone, So, and to tell the story of the of Valpolicella, of the varieties, so to express the autochthon varieties, but in a different way. Nowadays, I saw that many others producers are following me in this direction.
Okay.
So the ones that were telling me, "Oh, you're crazy," nowadays, 10
They've,
years
they've
afterwards,
changed their story. Okay. And
they are
is
starting with this.
is this Metido Classico?
No, yeah, it's a Martinotti, so it's a
Okay.
Chemin method.
Like
And
okay.
when people ask me why you are not doing a champenoise method, I always tell the truth, that my warehouse is already full of Amarone that have to age. An Amarone you have to wait 5 years to
Of
obtain.
course. Of course. Right.
And I don't have enough patience to wait other 3 years, to obtain a sparkling wine
Right. Right.
plastic method.
That makes sense. Okay.
So this
Let's
is
think.
the truth.
You have a lovely white too. Tell us
Yes,
about that.
yeah. We also have Garganega, and this is Duquesa Allegra. So it's the unique white grapes we have, and as you see, the label is like the others. So it's all around, and it's 100% Garganega. We only produce 8,000 bottles, so only few of it, but is always out of stock in few months, because it's extremely fresh. The acidity is quite high, it's pretty much higher compared to the others, Garganega, and it's not a Soave, so it's not a DOC. But anyway, it has his identity and represent the identity of our valley.
Where you're located in Mezzane di Sotto, that technically is part of the Soave zone, correct?
Yes, in
But you choose
Mezzane,
not to. Go ahead.
yeah, in Mezzane you have few. It's really
Yeah, they
it's a
kind of
bit,
overlap, Amarone and Soave, right? Or
yeah.
Valpolicella and Soave, excuse me.
Yeah, it's a bit mixed. So there are a few fields that are called Soave. They could call it Soave. Some others no. So it's quite a mess. I mean, it's not
Right.
from. We are 300 meters far away from a field of DOC. So you could not say yes. You see, we are in or out. I'm happier to be out because you see, if you are a DOC appellation, you should be much more strict, and you
Right,
should.
right. The specific rules that you have to follow, right?
And as I produce only few bottles, for me, it's not even interesting to be in.
Okay. And is that a friend of yours that does the artwork, or is it just a local artist, or drawing
Labels.
the labels, right?
Yeah, no, these labels, it's a project called the Portrait Line. And we started it a few years ago with Franco Chiani, who passed away last year at 80 years old. He was a really famous artist, and he designed some really famous brands like DeLonghi and some other few brands, Italian brands that really well known,
Okay.
because he was a graphic and artisan, artist. So he was
Right.
drawing all the brands by hand. And this opera has been called Facebook at Biennale in Venice a few years ago. And when I saw these little portraits, I fall in love with the project because I wanted to talk about about wine, but in a different way
Right.
to young people. And when I understood that this project could be really helpful to do that, we decided to do something together. And he was a mentor for me, so he helped me a lot for my brands. And actually we decided to be ironic, so to interpret the wine aristocracy in a different way,
Okay.
to make fun of it.
Yeah, it can't all be serious. And number one, like you said, and number two, it's like, it attracts your eye. I mean, you look at that label and you want to pick up a bottle, and if you pick up a bottle, that's half the battle. You probably buy it, so you're take it off the list, whatever.
And also some people says to me that these labels are really special because they attract people that probably recognize a sign, so that belongs to their past. So it's kind of a vintage, but also hipster for young.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
both.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good thing. You got to get control of the hipster market. That's always important. So, and of course you have the traditional Valpolicella. You have the Superiore there, or you have that bottle, or?
No, because we the last vintage of Profazio, our Valpolicella Superiore, finished only a few months ago, and we are waiting for the new vintages. As Profazio is a really special project that we vinify only in the really good vintages.
Okay.
So only few bottles, around 6,000 bottles. So it's a special project that is called Profazio, and we are producing it only in few vintages.
Okay.
So the last vintages has been the 2016.
And I see more and more bottlings of Valpolicella Superiore these days, which of course means you age it a little bit longer. The alcohol maybe is a touch higher. But what are your thoughts on the best parts of Valpolicella? I mean, a lot of people just, the name is very famous, and for many people my age, I'm getting up there, but Valpolicella, when it first came in this country, was a very light, easy, drinkable wine, and nobody would think of it as a wine that could age. But some of the best examples of superiority can certainly drink well when they're 8, 10, 12 years old. So what is your Valpolicella Superiore like?
For us, Valpolicella Superiore represent the identity of the company, and because it's not the process of vinification is not too complicated. So sometimes I always talk about a women. For example, an Amarone it's a woman with a lot of makeup, you know.
Okay, right.
The process is quite long, to get towards the final product. And then you need the dry process, aging the grapes, aging the wine. So it's really complicated. For the Valpolicella Superiore, it's talking again about a woman, could be a woman without too much makeup. So
Okay.
so that reflects the identity of the valley, the identity of the soils. So it's much more representative than an Amarone. So you could compare it with other Valpolicella Superiore, the aging of the wine, the aging of there is no aging of the grapes. So you see, the only problem, you don't have too many rows. So every single company has his own recipe, and that
Exactly.
could be a problem because in the rows, I mean, you have to wait age at least 1 year to obtain a Valpolicella Superiore. But you could age it in oak, in steel tanks. You could age everywhere you want. So it's not specificated where you have to age it,
And,
So
and then in the grapes, I mean, you could have Saleta, you could have Molinara, you could not have those grapes. You have to have, Rondinella and Corvina, obviously, but in Corvignone, but.
So you could dry the grapes. You see, it's not it's really difficult to compare every single company style. That's why for us, our Valpolicella Superiore should reflect a plot, should reflect a cru, should reflect the terroir instead of having all this complicated process. So it's much difficult because you should interpretate the vintage. You probably should follow, the vintage, but it's more challenging and it's more interesting for us because representing the soils and the contest, where you are producing. It's better than interpreting the style of the producer.
Okay, let's move on to I see you have a bottle of Maria Bella there, your Ripasso.
Yes.
Ripasso certainly is very popular in the United States. Tell us, and I understand it's your most popular wine too, right?
Yeah, Ripasso, Marchesa Maria Bella. We are finishing the 2019. We are starting selling the 2020, and it's a really fresh idea of Ripasso. So it's not too much concentrate. There are no so many sugar residuals in it.
Okay.
So it's much more easier to pair with food, and that's why it probably is the best seller for us, for Massimago. So we are producing around 35,000 bottles of it. So it's the wine that probably is more appreciated and more well known as well in terms in the awareness of Massimago. So people are asking me about it on the socials. They're just tagging me many times in the pictures. So they are loving it. The project of Amarone is something to also I was mentioning you before about the single parcels. It's also to give space to Amarone as well, not talking always about Ripasso, but also trying to have a focus on Amarone as well.
Okay, and you mentioned the sparkling wine wasn't available in the restaurants, but I assume this is available in local restaurants in Verona and in the area, right? And wine bars and things. So, all right. So let's talk about you said 3 different Amarone, right?
Yeah. So this is the blend. So this is the blend of Amarone we produce since always. But this in Italy we started presenting the new project, starting from a new bottle that I don't have it in here, but it's called the SVM 400. That means selection vine Mace. Mace is the name of the plot, and is the one that is at 400 meters on the sea level. And
Here's the bottle here.
yes. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So SVM. So as you can see in the gold color, and 400 meters is the altitude, and the plot designed on the image is the actually the shape of the parcel, and is the highest plot we have.
How many meters above sea level?
400.
400. Okay, sorry.
And
how many bottles of that did you produce this first time?
only 1,200.
Okay.
So only few of them, because the plot is not so big. It's about 2 hectares. So and the selection is really extreme. So we decided to start with this, and then we already produced some others, the other 2. That probably are gonna be presented in the next Vinitaly, and the other 2 are other 2 plots that we decided to valorize as well. So it's
the classic. I'm sorry, the classic Amarone that you just showed the bottle next to you. This year you'll be releasing 2017. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And now throughout much of Italy, it was a very warm, even a hot growing season. So that a lot of people get scared when they read that. But you know, in Valpolicella, you pick the grapes early, so it would seem to be it's not as serious a condition in your area as it would be in Tuscany or Piemonte or other parts of Italy. Would I be correct in assuming that? Tell us about 2017.
In 2017, we had a really. I know that there was a hailstorm in the classic area, so sometimes when hailstorm came, it's always in classic area or in eastern part or in Valpantena. So that year I remember that I felt really lucky because of it, and also the weather was extremely high. I mean, the temperature, I remember they were really high during the summer, but in the springtime and in the wintertime we had really good conditions of weather. So indeed we had a great vintage, a great harvest, really calm, and yeah, I remember a good vintage. So I know that in other regions, 2017 has been quite tough.
Challenging, right,
For many reasons.
right,
But you see, it's always a matter of where you are located, not only the region, but also the area.
right. I see a bottle of Conte Gastone there. That's your other Amarone, correct?
Hmm. Yes, this is the
Let's
other
start that.
we are producing is 2017.
Okay.
And, you see, Amarone Conte Gastone. It always sounds good.
What's the story behind the Conte Gastone? Is it a famous historical character from the area, or?
No, you see, they're all invented characters, but every
Oh, okay. Right.
character has its own ironic story. And so, for example, Patrick, the one with the glasses on,
Right.
is a designer, competitive flipper champion. Enea, this one uh, is a Latinist, ironic, and great poker player. You see, it's really
Okay.
a way to engage people to recognize themselves in the labels, to
Got it.
create
Okay.
a relationship of trust between the customers uh, and the label and the product itself. So it's not a way to uh, you see, sometimes in the wine business, you always talk about the estate, about the company, about the wine producers. But nowadays, it's important to talk about the customer instead of, creating a wall
So you
from,
have to connect with them, right?
yeah, to connect instead of creating wall and scaring young customers, to approach wine. It's important to get them closer to the producer, and not talking always about the producer, how uh, they did their choices. I mean, when you are approaching wine is because you're partying, you want to play, you want to have fun, to
Joy,
a
right?
good time, and you don't want to be scared from a wine label.
That's well said, and I think that's a great way of reminding people that the wine industry is a personal industry. I mean, I've been able to meet so many different, owners like yourself, or winemakers, or vineyard managers, and it's just you tell their story. I mean, after a while, it's like you said, that can get to be a little bit too much. All the statistics and how many bottles you produce and how long you kept it in oak, and it's hard to connect that way. But with personalities, it makes it much easier. So well done. One last question, and then we'll let you go. But I've been in the business quite a few years, and I remember Amarone was, a hugely successful red wine in America, and it still is very popular, but not like it was 20, 30 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with, the image of Amarone. It's such a big, powerful wine, and now we're talking about 15.5% alcohol, sometimes even higher. And people want to, whether they know it or not, they want to eat and drink a little bit lighter style of wine and food. So number one, what do you tell people, to combat that? How do you promote, the Amarone? Why should they drink Amarone? And what should they drink it with? What food should they pair it with?
Nowadays we have completely different habits in food pairing. Nowadays we are vegan, we are vegetarian. We don't cook for 5 hours
Right.
a special meat. You could not find wild birds at the supermarket, and or special cheeses. So, in my opinion, it's not a matter of special food pairing, but trying to produce a wine that could be fresh and could be easier to pair to any kind of food, because especially during the COVID, I knew that in New York. You were ordering food at any time as usual, no? Because you couldn't come out from your
Right.
house.
Of course.
So you see, in New York you have so many food you could pair with. So it's a shame for me to say, oh, you should pair it just with a special Italian recipe, or so I would suggest people to just enjoy the wine as even itself, or pairing with any kind of food, but having fun and enjoying it instead of have too many questions.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you. And first of all, fingers crossed for good weather the rest of the growing
Yes.
season. So I appreciate your time today. We
Thank you.
see each other at the station. So ci vediamo fra 2 settimane,
Ottimo.
and enjoy your wines, and hopefully everyone watching today will get a chance to try the wine. So thank you again, and
Thank you for the opportunity. Ciao.
ciao ciao.